Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Sathi and today is Tuesday, so we are going to kickstart our day by having a very nice interesting piece of information that I would label it, because we do feel that in Pakistan, in the Punjab and in particularly Sindh, there is a culture of dog fighting or the bear baiting where people train their dogs to fight, and that is sort of a sport, but it's a very bloody sort of a sport because dogs are fighting with each other and there's so much injured and there's so much scathing going on within them. So I came across that it was not actually an indigenous sport here. This was the sport that was introduced by the British in the subcontinent because they wanted to cultivate and foster the relationship with the landlords here and the farmers who were actually resisting the British imperial yoke here. And they were very successful in cultivating that sort of relationship back in the 18th century. So this sport was very much famous in England back in 15th century, and it is said that the Queen Elizabeth I and the Henry VIII were very fond of watching this sport of the dog fighting and the bear baiting back in the England. But ultimately, as the liberal idea started to develop, as the Enlightenment ideals started to develop, there was a lot of opposition about this sport, and back in the 19th century, at the end of it actually 1980, or rather in the 1890, this sport was banned because it's very cruel, and obviously animals, they're voiceless, they do not have that sort of a voice that we can understand their communication, and it's very cruel when it comes to that. But again, it was a social prestige, it has a sort of a masculinity in it, and when the British colonists came here, they started adopting tiger hunting as a sport, and it was seen as a very prestigious sort of a sports, and that used to distinguish them from the locals here because they used to look down upon the locals, and they have started to make locals engage in the dog fighting and in the bear baiting in the first place. But again, this is a very darker side of the modernity and the colonialism here, and we still see that this tradition somehow is alive in lots of parts of the Pakistan, especially in the form of making hens fight each other. Again, it's a very cruel sort of a sport, and we should desist from that because there is a lot of animal cruelty in that. Right, so moving on to our top stories part of it, because this is my favorite part of this segment, which is about our Prime Minister has landed at United Nations in the New York Assembly to participate in the 77th session of United Nations General Assembly. He was received at the John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York, by Pakistan's permanent representative to United Nations, Munir Akram, Pakistan's ambassador to Washington, Masood Khan, and other senior officers. Prime Minister will address the United Nations General Assembly session on the 23rd of this month. And before moving on to the New York, he was back in the London where he attended the funeral of the Queen Elizabeth II. That was a very sort of a hectic and I would say a very heavy sort of a diplomatic engagement, because obviously a lot of world leaders are there, and it's not just the place to offer the condolence but also to engage in the diplomatic activity and to enhance the prestige of a country, as it is said. Now moving on to our another top story, which is about on the direction of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has set up a photo exhibition at the UN Secretariat lobby in New York, displaying the destruction wreaked in Pakistan by the recent floods. In a tweet, the Information Minister Mariam Aurangzeb said the exhibition will remain on display during the United Nations General Assembly session this week. Well, I do feel that especially when it comes to 21st century, there are a lot of ways which can be used to enhance the diplomatic clout of the country, and I do feel the smart diplomacy is incorporating the arts, incorporating the culture, incorporating the softer aspects of the diplomacy to target a particular sort of a message. And I do feel that the arts, the paintings and this sort of the activity does portray or give some sort of the message, and especially at a time when the global leaders are uniting at the United Nations General Assembly for the speeches, which is a diplomatic event of the year. Moving on to our third top story, which is about the cricket. So the trophy for the T20I series between Pakistan and England has been unveiled at National Stadium, ending 17 years of wait for the country to host the England. Oh wow! The trophy of the T20I series was revealed by Pakistan skipper Babar Azam and his English counterpart Jos Buttler before both the captains posed with the trophy. Earlier, both teams held practice session for first T20I scheduled on tomorrow. Players from both the teams participated in batting, bowling and fielding drills. The 7th match T20I series, Karachi will host the first 4 matches, while the remaining 3 matches will be played at the Gaddafi Stadium in Lahore. Pakistan will take on England today in the first T20 of the 7-match series at the National Stadium in Karachi. I do feel that cricket, and when the international cricket is coming to the country, it boosts a lot of local economy, and it's a boost to the national economy also because it enhances the prestige of that. And engaging in the sports diplomacy or encouraging the sporting event in Pakistan, I do feel it's a very good initiative considering the fact that we are living in the 21st century where our obsession with the gadgets and with the electronic metals is so much that it is making us far away from the natural sports or from the physical sports when it comes to that. So I do feel that the sports is always a go, and I do feel that we should encourage more sporting when it comes to that. So now moving on to our topic, and we all know that Pakistan has been wrecked by the floods. And the floods have wreaked so much havoc across the country that it's not just one province that is under the water, submerged under the water. It's all the 4 provinces, including Gilgit-Baltistan, including Kashmir, that is inundated by this amount of the water. And it's a national calamity, it's a national disaster that has struck us, and more so, the more worrying part of it, and the more I would say very minute part of it, is that Pakistan is not even a contributor when it comes to that. Pakistan is less than 1% global contributor towards the carbon emission. It is the rich countries, the global north, which has been engaging in this, I would call it carbon colonialism, in which they are actually producing so much carbon emissions that we see climate change, and then climate change then manifesting into the flooding. Before flooding, we had droughts, we had heat waves, vanishing of the spring season, and the way the season is rolling out, I do feel that we're not going to witness the autumn. It's just going to be a straight transition towards the winter. So as a country, we were very proud of the diversity in the seasons, but now that is vanishing because of the human-made activity called climate change. So to discuss more on how the adverse effects of the climate change are affecting us and how we need to walk the talk on this narrative, we are joined by a very prestigious guest who is very enlightened about this entire topic, and he's going to enlighten us and our audiences about this topic. So I'm very lucky that I've been joined by Dr. Ijaz Ahmed, who happens to be environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Jazakallah, sir. So, sir, we have seen that how floods have wreaked havoc across Pakistan, and obviously they're the manifestation of the uglier phenomena called climate change.
Right.
And we have seen that the world leaders have gathered in the COP conferences where their reports have been released, where they have said that we need to reduce the global emission or the global warming below than the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the pre-industrial level. Do you think we can actually attain this target, or as we're progressing ahead, this seems to be a distant dream?
Well, I think it will take time because the lifestyle that we have globally,
Right.
now we have been following the last lifestyle. I think it will take maybe few decades to come back to the same position where we were, and I think it's also very important to realize that now we are in a position where we have to come back to the pre-industrial era.
True.
And we have already seen the disasters not only in Pakistan but
True.
also globally in many countries. These rain, the floods, the heat wave, the fires, the frequency has increased tremendously. Even, you know, like as you mentioned, before these floods, we actually witnessed few hundred fires, forest fires in Pakistan.
In Margalas.
In Margalas, in KP, in many, I mean, like even in Balochistan. So these are some of the indicators that situation is not that good.
Right.
And even at the moment, if we go through the media reports in Chile, in China, in many other countries, there are disasters which are going on.
True.
So in order to come back to the situation, pre-industrial situation, I think it is the first thing which is very important is to realize that
Right.
what are the issues, why this is happening, and then coming up with the solutions.
Right.
So things I think it's always easy to destruct, but the
True.
construction takes time,
Right.
and if you know like start planting trees, it
Right.
will take 50 years or maybe more to grow a good actually sized tree,
Right.
but it will take maybe a minute to actually bring it down to the earth. Yeah.
That's really true. And as I was researching for the program, I came across a speech in the COP26, and I think one of the Caribbean island leaders said that nature is our ally, and the more we restore the wildness, the more it is going to help us capture the carbon. That's very true. But do you feel that the planting trees is only the solution, or when it comes to solution to combat the climate change, what are the other smart solutions that we can
Well,
look?
yeah, I think we need to actually look into the issue. I mean, like the issue is the emissions. So more
Right.
and more emissions are coming, and which mainly contains carbon.
Right.
And the best sink of carbon is actually a plant.
True.
So in order to enhance uh, the sink, you
Right.
need to plant more trees. There are many other ways, like for example, when we talk about these wetlands, water bodies. I think constructed wetlands is another option. So there are many other options, but I think the easiest and um, you can get multiple benefits if we plant trees.
True.
And I think uh, this is something which has educational value as well. It also supports the watershed management. So there are many other associated benefits as well. So
Right.
I think planting tree in at a larger scale is one of the basic benefit, one of the basic tool that we need to actually use in order to reduce the emissions, in order to improve the sink, in order to enhance the oxygen in the atmosphere.
Right. Thank you so much for saying that. So, Dr. Saab, we've seen that how when it comes to human security, there is so much food insecurity in the aftermath of the flooding season. And we have also seen the visuals where there's so much water and the apple orchard has been destroyed by that water, and those apples are floating in the water and they can't be transported to the market because the infrastructure has been damaged in the first place. So, I would really want to ask you, there's a lot of focus nowadays on the climate smart agriculture. How in Pakistan can we introduce such sort of agriculture which is climate resilient and which helps us to sustain these effects of climate change, or is it possible in the first matter?
Yeah, I think it is possible, and globally there are ways which are being actually demonstrated, which are being used, and even in Pakistan, controlled sheds are there where you can manage off-season crops and off-season vegetables, and
True.
to a greater extent, we cannot scale up to that level, but ultimately climate smart agriculture is the option at the moment. What has happened is after these floods, I think food security issue will be one of the major concern for Pakistan, and also for um, I think the other countries which are facing the same situation.
Right.
And when you talk about food security during this flood season, we lost most of the rice crop.
True. True.
Cotton, though it's not part of the food security issue, but it's our cash crop.
True.
Most of the industries in Pakistan, they are based on cotton.
True.
Similarly, many other crops and as you mentioned, fruits,
Right.
they also got damaged, and then the livelihood of the people which were associated, like more than 50% of our labor force
Right.
is associated with agriculture.
Right.
And then in addition to that, I think if we don't get the dryness at a level where the wheat crop is coming very soon. So the sowing of wheat crop is also as important as the livelihood of the people, because that is the major crop that we depends on, and if the land is not prepared in coming 2 to 3 months, then we will have another issue of like concern of sowing the wheat crop.
Right.
And if we don't go for like climate smart agriculture,
Right.
then we are at the loser end, and it is going to create like severe law and order situation, and the food security issues, the livelihood related issues, and there will be a big crisis.
Right, that's very true. And Dr. Saab, my team and I, we went to DI Khan and we witnessed the first-hand devastation of the floods that has wreaked havoc there. And we were told that there is a ancient system called Roth-Kohi system, where that is used for the reservoir management or the water management in the first place. And a lot of locals told me actually that there was a lot of destruction, or I would say obstruction, in the face of the water. So local communities, they have maybe constructed houses in the flow of the water, and sometimes they have constructed their farming areas in the face of the water, and that is why when the water flow was obstructed, there was even more damage because of the flooding.
Right.
Do you think, in your experience, that the local communities shy away from climate smart solutions because in the short term it is going to harm them?
Not really. I think they need to know first, and once they know the importance and use of climate smart, and it's not a rocket science. I think it's just to like plant specific crop for certain areas, and then based on the climatic conditions, irrigate them, or like getting the seeds, etc. But I think coming to the fundamental issue, which is the obstruction at different level, whether it's the river basin, whether it's the river bed, or the flow of water. I think we have created obstructions in many ways, and we have seen good examples. Like not good examples though, and what happened in Swat. It's just because the river bed has been obstructed, so the water had no way to actually exit, and ultimately it started creating problems. And we blame flood, we blame water for that, but I think we don't understand what is the major reason. We are the major issue and problem, because we are limiting water to a level which is not possible for such a gushing floods. Similarly, what happened in last year in E11 in Islamabad, the river bed or the flow from I think 80 to 100 feet, the mouth of the Nala was reduced to 20 feet. So ultimately the pressure of water was enormous, and ultimately resulted in the destruction of some of the areas, and life. There were 3 or 4 people died. And similarly, like if you go into floodplains, you will see the same situation where we have actually constructed or started agricultural practices, or built colonies, houses, roads on the riverbed. So ultimately, river pressure, the pressure of water is very strong, especially during the flood time. So that is the result, and some of the losses that have incurred is because of these obstructions and these structures that has been developed on the way, on the river beds, on to restrict the river flow of water.
That's very true. It's not, of course, it's the climate change that is impacting us, but it is also the bad construction which is in the place of the water, or the intensity of the water, that is also contributing towards the problem. Now coming towards the solution, so Dr. Saab, talking about the green recovery, of course, we are going to get a lot more when the damage assessment or the impact assessment comes out, and we are going to witness how much losses have occurred. And when it comes to recovery, so how can we help in the green recovery? As a specialist, how would you suggest that?
Well, I think we need to number one see into the nature-based solutions.
Okay.
There are many nature-based solutions. We just talked about forest afforestation.
Right.
And one of the program that is already going on is this 10 billion tree tsunami program. So we need to expand it and see how. And there has been a lot of damages to plantation as well because it was not mature enough to hold the flow of water.
Right.
So we need to come up with some better solution related to afforestation. Similarly, we need to look into the role of wetlands, role of water bodies to reduce the impact of flood. And that is some of the practices which has been actually going on globally. And like China has changed the whole scenario by converting these floods into a blessing.
Right.
By using the water intelligently and by reducing the pressure of water by constructing different wetlands and slowing the process of water flow. Similarly, mangrove plantation.
Right.
So there are many ways where you can come up with different nature-based solutions, which are more reliable, which are more permanent, which are less expensive.
Right.
But then I think we also need to look into some of the infrastructures. Infrastructures like maybe small dams where we need to recharge our aquifer as well.
Right.
Because over a period of time the water level in different part of Pakistan has actually, especially in the urban setting, has gone down. Only in Islamabad that has gone down to a few meters in last few years. So that small dams will help in recharging the aquifer and absorbing water. Similarly, we have seen that in Islamabad they have actually done some of the even in Lahore. I visited the Lawrence Garden area where they have storage ponds, big ponds, big tanks, and the capacity of one such tank was 1.5 million gallons.
Right.
So that 1.5 million gallon water has been stored for horticulture purpose, for irrigating the parks and etc. Otherwise, that water would have created havoc by just wandering into the streets, becoming the sort of like heaven for mosquitoes and bad smell, etc. So that kind of solutions we need to look into, and then where we have a win-win situation. Otherwise, if we continue situations like we had in 2010, we have gone through the very severe floods, but nothing happened. I mean, like to that extent that we are sitting now after 12 years and talking about the same thing, and getting worried about the damages that has happened. I think we could have reduced most of these damages to a greater extent.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for enlightening us about all of these damage assessment and how we can contribute better in the green recovery. And especially, this is high time that we need to walk the talk around the climate change, because Pakistan is bearing the brunt of that. And as a climate change minister very aptly mentioned, we need to move beyond the pledges and promises and walk the talk around it, because in the end, it's Pakistan that is suffering from that, right? And when Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, also mentioned that it's not about the generosity when the aid is coming, because aid has a certain sort of a connotation around it, right? Which makes us look very weak when it comes to that. But it's about the reparations, because this is the loss and damage that has been caused by the global north, right? And to talk more about the waterborne diseases and how we can help people who are there in the affected areas, We have very superb guests in our second segment, but we are going to go back after a short break.
Sitar is a plucked stringed instrument used in Pakistani classical music. The instrument flourished under the Mughal Empire.
हालिया बारिशों ने मुल्क में 30 साला रिकॉर्ड तोड़ दिया है और अब तक लाखों अफराद सैलाब से मुतासिर हो चुके हैं। ये मासूम बच्चे, ये बेबस बहनें, ये भाई और ये बुजुर्ग आपकी फराख दिलाना इमदाद के मुंतजिर हैं। वजीर आजम पाकिस्तान मोहम्मद शहबाज शरीफ के सैलाब जदगान के लिए माली इमदाद की अपील। आप भी स्पेशल अकाउंट G12164 में दिल खोलकर इमदाद दें और अपने हमवतनों के जख्मों पर मरहम रखें। बैरून मुल्क मुकीम पाकिस्तानी वायर ट्रांसफर, मनी सर्विस ब्यूरो, मनी ट्रांसफर ऑपरेटर्स और एक्सचेंज हाउसेस के जरिए अतियात भिजवा सकते हैं। अंदरूनी मुल्क कमर्शियल बैंकों में भी नकद अतियात जमा करवाए जा सकते हैं।
से मुतासरा बहन
Welcome back, and before going on to the short break, we were talking about how flooding has impacted us and how the climate change is the ugliest manifestation of the modernity, and we need to do more because, of course, we are adversely affected by it. So to talk the other broader aspects of the flooding here in Pakistan, we are going to talk about the mental health aspect of it, the public health aspect of it, because there's so much calamity there, and I have seen the first-hand devastation that has struck there. There are a lot of places where they do not have the access to the medical camps in the first place. So if someone wants to volunteer there, if someone wants to help, especially in terms of the medical profession, how can they help, and what sort of the medicines that can go there, and what sort of the diseases that the medical experts are guessing will be there, and we have to tackle them. So to talk more about the mental health aspect of it and the public health aspect of it, we have a wonderful guest in the studio who is going to enlighten us about all of this situation. So I'm very glad and honored that I have been joined by Dr. Ahmed Abdullah, who happens to be the Associate Professor, Community Medicine at the Islamabad Medical and Dental College. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab, and welcome to World This Morning.
Walaikum salam ji, thank you for having me.
Right, so Dr. Saab, I wanted to ask you this question, that if someone wants to volunteer there and wants to help in terms of the medical or the medicines profession, how can he help there? What sort of the diseases do you think will be there?
We were in Bahrain, Sawat last week.
Okay.
We had a very successful medical camp over there.
Lovely.
And I've been doing philanthropic work and working in, this habit developed in the 2005 earthquake.
Okay.
And going to, marginalized populations, especially after they've been struck by a disaster. It's a tough job, but it's always rewarding on a very psychological level.
Right.
So anyone who plans to go to help these people, they need to plan it in a systematic order, and they need to make a list of all the things they need to do. This includes the workforce that they're going to that is going to accompany them. They need to make a list of all the logistics and the medications that they're going to use for on the site. And then they need to be very stringent about the transportation and the accommodation, especially if female healthcare providers are accompanying the team.
Right.
In terms of the diseases that we thought that were more prevalent after experiencing these things, they include respiratory infections, because people, come together and they have to, come together in a small space. Usually they're sharing spaces in tented villages.
True.
So then there is the threat of waterborne diseases, orofecal diseases, which happen because of the consumption of unclean drinking water or unclean food. And then there are the arthropod-borne diseases, which include dengue, malaria, and all of those things. Besides that, having faced a disaster, it always has mental health effects.
True.
And one thing that is frequently missed out are the sexual and reproductive health problems that occur due to this. So as we converse more, I think we'll discuss these in detail.
So moving to the mental health aspect of it, so Dr. Saab, in Pakistan there is sort of a stigma attached to the mental health aspect of the problems, because a lot of people says, okay, the community who have been affected by the flooding, they're struggling at the basic level. They do not have the food and shelter there. And if you can see the Maslow hierarchy, you will see that the psychological effects are the second or the third tier of it, right? And it is said that, okay, ye to ameeron ki bimariyan hai, psychological mental health problem. It's not the problem of the poor people, because again, they're struggling at the basic level. So in a very resource deprived area, how can we help the people of that area when it comes to having the mental health aspect of it?
Okay, so I'm just trying to bust this myth.
True.
In a recent study conducted by the World Health Organization, the single most common factor found to be the cause of depression were financial constraints.
Okay.
So finances and your financial condition is closely related to mental health. The second one was relationships and intimacy. So these two things are really closely related to mental health. So ये अमीरों की बीमारियां नहीं हैं. I believe that they inflict poor people more than rich people.
Right.
Because people who have money, they have means to have a form of escape from whatever situation is unacceptable for their psychology. But poor people are stuck in situations. We have the disease and poverty cycle. Again, if you relate it to the mental health aspect, disease, poverty, mental health, all of these things come together and reduce the productivity of people and push them further into poverty. Having faced any sort of trauma, that could be a disaster, could be a dacoity attempt, could be a rape attempt, any sort of mental or physical trauma has an acute stress syndrome as a response. And if this lingers on, this could turn into post-traumatic stress disorder, which was originally called shell shock. It happened to soldiers coming back from war. So disasters and all such situations which disrupt normal life always carry a lot of mental health baggage with them.
Okay, lovely for enlightening us about it, and I really wanted to talk about the reproductive aspect of it, or the neonatal health of the young mothers. And we have seen the reports that there are more than 700,000 of the new mothers, of the pregnant ladies who are going to deliver there. So what sort of a help can we, sort of the assistance can we send to them when it comes to the new mothers, and especially when it comes to their nutrition or the other medical help? As a doctor, what would you say?
I think that dividing this problem into three parts would make it easier to solve. The first people you need to focus it on are the women who are just ready to deliver. So these are the natal mothers who are about to give birth, and that is an emergency situation. Then we need to focus on the pregnant women, so the period of pregnancy. And once the lady has given birth to the baby, so we'd like to focus on the baby and the recovering mother as well. So, Pakistan has one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the world. We have a terrible infant mortality rate, and our perinatal mortality rate is comparable to Ethiopia. So these things make already bad situations worse.
you know, firstly, we should focus on women who need to deliver
Right.
and, you know, make arrangements.
Right.
Because floods don't only disrupt the lives of people, they disturb the infrastructure of the health system as well. So the health system responsiveness to such calamities is also affected.
Okay.
So, you know, organizations, the government, whoever is working in the field needs to set up delivery camps for these women so they can safely and cleanly deliver the children. And then once they're done with that, you could, you know, take care of the newborns and the recovering mother. Before that, you'd also need to focus on the nutrition, the health, the exposure to environmental factors of the pregnant women.
Right.
You know, there's a recent survey, again sponsored by the WHO,
Right.
which talks about the impact of heat on a pregnant lady.
Right.
And it says that, you know, if women are exposed to large amounts of heat during their pregnancy,
Right.
it has a potential to cause intrauterine growth retardation, IUGR.
Okay.
So smaller, weaker, less children with less immunity, there is a potential that you'll have them once these women deliver.
Okay. So, Dr. Saab, coming to the communicable and the non-communicable diseases aspect of it, would you like to shed some light on that, especially when it comes to the flood-affected areas of Pakistan?
So I think that in the communicable part, we should discuss three main areas of diseases.
Okay.
One would be the waterborne diseases,
Okay.
which are caused by consuming unclean drinking water and unclean food as well.
True.
So mostly these involve the gut,
Okay.
and they cause diarrhea, gastroenteritis,
Right.
various forms of hepatitis A and E.
Right.
So these are acute problems, and if not treated in the right way, they can have, you know, critical effects on
Okay.
people, because dehydration is a killer.
Okay.
So you need, the first thing you need for this would be clean drinking water,
Okay.
and make arrangements for providing clean drinking water to these people.
Okay.
The second thing you'd need is right medication,
Right.
oral rehydration solutions, and if need be, IV infusions.
Okay.
So some major outbreaks of, you know, there was a recent outbreak of cholera in Sindh. Cholera was lost for a couple of years, but now with the climatic changes going on and with these disasters going on, and with the population problems rising, so these diseases are re-emerging.
Right.
You know, they were prevalent ones, then we controlled them through vaccination and medication,
Right.
but you know, they're becoming resistant to the usual medication, and now they're re-emerging and causing havoc.
Okay.
So the next thing I'd like to discuss would be the skin conditions caused by a flooding situation,
Okay.
because people are exposed to water for a long time,
Right.
and it's not clean water,
Right.
plus they have limited opportunities for maintaining personal hygiene. You know,
Right.
you can't argue with people if they don't have food and you tell them to
True.
have a good hygiene.
Right.
So many skin conditions, fungal infections, scabies, bacterial skin infections, viral diseases, all of these arise from an exposure to water for a long time,
Right.
especially once the water starts getting stagnant.
Right.
The third thing would be, again, we've discussed the gastrointestinal
Right.
and the skin conditions.
Right.
The third thing would probably be the mental health
Okay.
baggage of it.
Okay, so Dr. Saab, I would really like to ask you, because when I went to DI Khan and I saw that the people do not have access to clean drinking water, and even before the floods, they do not have the access to it, and they were drinking from the same pond, the muddled part of the water from which the animals were drinking, right? So what sort of a easy solution we can offer to such kind of population that do not have access to clean drinking water when it comes to sending aid from here to that part of the area?
So again, for me, because I believe that I have some right to an opinion.
Okay.
You know, this is counterproductive. It's an easier alternative to provide bottled water,
Right.
but then you're, you know, damaging the environment with further plastic waste.
True.
So you know, bottled water is you know, it's easy, it's convenient. There are researchers coming in that we're consuming a lot of plastics
Right.
under the veil of bottled water.
Right.
So I think we need to, you know, come up with more ingenious ideas
Right.
where we help people without hurting the environment and
Right.
causing further climatic damage.
Right.
We could teach people the best way is to, take the methods of water purification on small scale
Okay.
to these people.
Okay.
There are various methods,
For example.
for example, reverse osmosis. So
Okay.
reverse osmosis plants in the vicinity can be used for providing clean drinking water in reusable containers, not disposable bottles. You could also boil the water if the
Right.
environment is, facilitating that.
Right.
The best way is to boil water. And
Right.
when we talk about boiling water, we say that
Right.
when it comes to a boiling point, you let it boil for a good
Right.
5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for enlightening us about the entire situation, especially when it comes to the medical aspect of that. So we would like to wrap up this segment, and I would also like you to give the breaking news, since the Angelina Jolie is coming to Pakistan to have the assessment of the flood affected areas, and she is a global celebrity and has been associated with the United Nations for a very long time. And it's very important that we need to walk the talk on this aspect of the climate change, because we in Pakistan are badly affected by that. So 1/3 of the country is submerged under the water. 33 million people of Pakistan are affected by the flood related affected areas of that. And once again, I would like you to give the breaking news that Angelina Jolie is coming to Pakistan to have a broader assessment of the flood related efforts or the assessment of the damage here. And you can see the tweet here. And we've also been joined by Zishan Haider Saab, who is a special correspondent of PTV. Assalamu alaikum, Zishan Saab.
Alaikum assalam.
Okay, sir. So we have seen that the Angelina Jolie is coming to Pakistan. Can you update us about her visit, and why is it important to have her in Pakistan?
Hajra, this announcement is made by International Rescue Committee, that was the world's known and very reputed non-governmental organization that helps communities affected by humanitarian crisis world over, worst humanitarian crisis. So it is IRC that has announced that Angelina Jolie would be visiting Pakistan to assess the humanitarian crisis caused by the recent floods that has devastated large part of the country. Rather, 1/3 of the country is underwater, and she is not new to Pakistan. She visited Pakistan to highlight plight of people stricken by devastating earthquake in 2005, and then in 2010 she visited Pakistan to highlight and draw attention of the world towards the plight of people affected by floods. Then also, so she is again coming as a humanitarian ambassador to Pakistan, and this visit is meant to draw the attention of the world towards the needs and plight of these people who are affected by these floods. So it is very important, and hopefully Pakistan's effort to tell the world and draw the world attention towards the sufferings of these needy people, I think that would be a good step and go in favor of Pakistan.
Right. Thank you so much, Zishan Saab, for enlightening us about the visit of the Angelina Jolie. And once again, I would like to tell our viewers that Angelina Jolie, the global celebrity, is coming to Pakistan to have a broader assessment of the flood-related situation here. And she has been here before, back in the 2010 when the flood struck us. And once again, she is coming back to Pakistan to have a broader assessment of the flood-related situation and the damage it has wreaked havoc it has on our country, on all 4 provinces when it comes to the flooding situation. So I would like to wrap up this segment, and I would like to thank you, Dr. Saab, for joining us. Jazakallah khair. And one thing that I really want to say again and reiterate is here that we need to walk the talk on the entire narrative of the climate change, and we need something concrete beyond the promises, beyond beyond the pledges and beyond that, because this is the issue that has affected the entire humanity, and we can see the very visible effects of it in Pakistan, because flood has again wreaked havoc where 1 in 7 person is affected by it. And in the aftermath of that, there's so many problems that are coming up. For example, the food insecurity. Crops have been destroyed by these flooding, and not just the cash crops but also the food, the staple crops of the Pakistan. So it is imperative that we become more climate resilient when it comes to that, and the global community needs to do more. So with this, I will say a goodbye and bid you farewell, and until next time, it's a goodbye and good morning.